Well, folks, you ever see one of those headlines out there and it just scares the heck out of you when you see this headline? You're like, oh my gosh, this can't mean good news for us, right? And we've had one of those headlines going around for the past about week now, okay? CEOs and insiders sell a record $69 billion of their stock, and the year isn't over yet. So on surface level, you read something like that and you're like, okay, CEOs and insiders are cashing out stocks. That must mean they think their stocks are going to crash or something like that, right? And what we're actually going to find here throughout this video is that doesn't mean that at all. And what we're going to find is it's actually a rather bullish thing that's going on out there if you want to think about next year and moving forward, okay? And if we look at history, we're going to be able to see, oh, things are actually lining up in our manner here. And I want to explain this so you folks can be educated on what exactly this means. Because like I said, I can understand, like as soon as you see that headline, it's like, oh my gosh, I got to sell everything. Like these stocks are going, to the floor or something like that, okay? So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this video. As always, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'm going to give you a second. Go ahead and do it. It's absolutely free to do so. Alrighty, guys. So CNBC's been using this photo a lot recently. It shows largest stock sellers. CEOs unload $69 billion of stock in 2021. It shows Elon Musk selling $10 billion, right? Jeff Bezos right around $10 billion. The Walton family over $6 billion. Mark Zuckerberg $4.4 billion. Obviously the Google guys $1.5 billion, $1.5 billion. And so folks look at that and they're like, oh my gosh. Now, first off, something very, very important is basically $20 billion of that $69 billion is wrapped up in two guys, right? Two guys. And then if you add up Zuck and Walton family, all of a sudden you're at nearly half of all shares sold so far this year have been by basically four folks, right? The Walton family, Zuckerberg, Bezos, and Elon Musk, all right? Now, it's also important to remember that almost every single year, these individuals sell stock, okay? It's very, very common for many of these folks to sell stock. They either want to give money to philanthropy, they want to use the money to diversify, they want to use the money to pay taxes, they want to use the money to build other businesses. Look at how many companies Elon Musk has. He has so many companies I can't even keep track of them all, to be quite frank, okay? And so he's always, using money here and there for other businesses, something very important. So 2021 insider selling, first point I want to make here is a lot of these individuals in CEOs, insiders, whatever, they sell based upon percentage, not dollar amount. And this is very, very key, okay? So a lot of times these folks will say, I want to sell 1%, okay? And a lot of times they'll even put it in the future. So it's not like they're like, day trading their own stocks or something like that. And they're like, today I'm selling out. Oh, tomorrow I'm selling out. A lot of times they'll put it in weeks ahead of time, months ahead of time, or sometimes even up to, 9, 12 months ahead of time, okay? And they'll say, I want to sell 0.5% of my shares. I want to sell 2% of my shares. I want to sell 4% of my shares, okay? And if we think about the two individuals who have sold the most in terms of dollar amount, right? Not percentage, but dollar amount, it's obviously Elon Musk at Tesla and Jeff Bezos at Amazon, right? Look where those companies have gone. Well, guess what? 1% to Elon Musk now is a massively bigger dollar amount than any time in history, right? 1% of Tesla used to be a pretty small number. Like when I first started buying Tesla, I don't know, it might have been a $40 billion market cap, roughly, somewhere around there, right? So if he sold 1% back then, right, it was like, what, $400 million, $400 million, right? Nowadays, it's $1 trillion+ market cap. So if you have 1% of Tesla shares now, you're talking about that's what, $10 billion roughly. 1% of $1 trillion is $10 billion. So think about that for a moment, right? The percentages are just are the same, right? But the dollar amounts are massive because the stocks have gone up so much market cap wise over the past few years, and for good reason, right? Tesla's, completely changed their business in the last 3 years. They went from a company that 3 years ago people were talking about it's going to zero, they're going bankrupt, to now it's like, oh, they're going to dominate the auto industry, right? And it's happened in literally the past 3 years, right? if you look at Amazon, look where that's valuation's gone over time. Amazon's now sitting, getting pretty close to a $2 trillion market cap for Amazon, right? And so Amazon used to be a $400 billion, $600 billion, $700 billion market cap, right? Now it's approaching $2 trillion, that is, right? And so if you look at it from that context, this looks like a situation where if Jeff Bezos wants to sell 2% of Amazon shares or 0.5% or whatever, it's a much larger dollar amount than it's ever been before, okay? And that can be said for almost every company that's a beast company and a beast stock, right? Look at the Google guys, right? They've sold over $3 billion combined this year. As a percent, that's a very, very small number. This is very, very important to keep in mind, okay? And so, records will continue to get beaten over the next decade, 2 decades, because the dollar amounts will just get bigger and bigger, right? And someday it'll be insiders sell $100 billion of stock, and $200 billion of stock, and $300 billion of stock, right? Because at the end of the day, the dollar amounts, the numbers just get larger and larger and larger, and there's going to be a day when we have $5 trillion market caps in the stock market, and $10 trillion market caps in the stock market, and dare I even say $15 and $20 trillion market caps in the stock market, right? That's where we're going over time. Second point I want to make here around 2021 insider selling is think about it, okay? Selling, a lot of folks just didn't sell last year, right? Or they didn't sell nearly what they wanted to. For a few reasons, right? One is in the first half of the year, stock prices were down massively. And so if you were an insider at one of these companies, do you really want to sell when the stock price is massively down? I wouldn't want to do it, right? Especially if I was in charge of a really good company. Also, second part to remember is in 2020, it wasn't the best look if you were an insider selling stock, right? We had no vax at that time. There was obviously, the numbers were sky high. There was a lot of worries about the future of the economy, future of companies, and some companies were even laying off workers. So at the end of the day, it was not a good look if you were a CEO or an insider and you were selling out shares of a company. It just was not a good look, okay? So that's another factor to keep in mind. There's probably just a lot of folks that wanted to maybe sell some shares last year. They just couldn't for either, ethic reasons or moral reasons, right? Because they felt like that wasn't right to do at that time, or just because they looked at it and they're like, man, our stock price is way down compared to where it will be in a year or two from now. Let me just wait till 2021 and 2022, right? Very, very important factor to remember there, okay? Now, on the Hungry Bowl today, if you haven't downloaded the Hungry Bowl yet, do so now on your iOS and Android store. That's a way to track your stocks, cryptos, keep up with what's going on in the market. Listen to earnings calls right inside the app. Read SEC reports right inside the app. The financials, all that good stuff, okay? But on the Hungry Bowl today, the guys even put out an article around this, okay? Basically, insider selling is at a record highs, but so are share buybacks. And I thought, this should be an interesting kind of perspective here. By the way, it's a very green day out there. So I went ahead and I clicked on this article, and it was pretty darn interesting, okay? Want to hear something weird? While 2021 has been a record year for insider selling, it has also been a year for record share buybacks. In the past decade, the only years to see bigger buybacks were 2011 and 2018, which were all years that were followed by bull markets. Okay, we're going to fact check that in a minute, because I read that and I was like, oh, really? Followed by a bull market? Okay. With so much capital saved in 2020 due to uncertainty, companies with strong balance sheets unleashed them and blessed shareholders with fat buybacks. Global companies have bought nearly $68 billion, well, CNBC says $69 billion, I don't know, 68, 69, whatever, billion worth of stock between January and November. And there could be more to come with December discounts, okay? Now, he also goes into buybacks by countries, buyback by sector, the top 10 stocks that have been buying back shares, and all those sorts of things, okay? We're not really going to get into that. I'm more focused on kind of like, the fact that in the past decade, the only years to see bigger buybacks than this year were 2011 and 2018, okay? I really want to kind of fact check this here, okay? Now, if we go ahead and we look at this, what we're going to see is, if we look at the NASDAQ, 2012 was a good year, right? It was a record year share buybacks in 2011, as they say. So 2012, the next year, the NASDAQ was up about 16%, okay? And they also say right here, 2018 was a year of bigger buybacks, and that was followed by a bull market. And so let's see 2019. 2019, NASDAQ was up 35.23%, right? 35.23%. So that's definitely some pretty good news. What about the S&P 500? Well, in 2012, up 13.41%. there. And then 2019 up 28.8% there. Okay, so what this means essentially is there is not nearly as much to fear when you read headlines like this. That is a very, very scary headline. At the end of the day, if Elon Musk wants to sell Tesla stock, it doesn't mean Tesla is doomed and they're not going to ever go up again or something like that, right? If Jeff Bezos is selling Amazon stock, doesn't mean that Amazon is doomed. I can tell you they're anything but doomed, okay? And Amazon's going to go to the floor or something like that, okay? Next year could be a great year for Amazon stock for all I know. That's actually one of the few big techs that really hasn't thrived over the past, basically year to date, like many of the other stocks have. There's actually a lot of the big techs, Google, Apple, Microsoft, and a lot of the other big techs have thrived this year. Amazon's kind of hasn't really done much, which is quite interesting, right? And so when you read a headline like this, you got to look a little deeper and you got to say, okay, am I just getting feared into something, right? And so once again, the only years that there were bigger share buybacks in this year, 2011 and 2018, and both those years were followed up by bull markets. Doesn't mean like next year is a guaranteed bull market, okay? I just want to be very clear about that. But when you start getting indicator after indicator of all these things kind of moving in the right direction, it's a pretty good thing nonetheless, okay? And so yeah, I just like to calm some anxieties and fears out there down and look at this objectively and try to look at it from all different angles out there, guys. So anyways, much love. I hope you enjoyed a video like this. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you download the Hungry Bull because the bull is hungry. And have a great day.